It was 6 o'clock in the morning when Natalie's scream woke the entire apartment building. A scream so sharp, so full of fury, that it seemed to shake the walls and jolt every neighbor on the floors above and below from their sleep. I heard her furious footsteps in the hallway, the metallic jangling of keys striking the lock over and over, and then her voice, not breaking with hysteria, but crackling with rage, as she pounded on my door with her closed fists. I was sitting in the living room, my hands folded in my lap, staring at the door as if seeing it for the first time. I had slept barely 2 hours that night, but not from fear. I slept little because finally, after 18 months of humiliation and silence, I had done what I should have done from the very beginning. I changed the locks. All 3 of them. Every single one that had protected the entrance to my home. This home I'd bought with money I earned on my hands and knees, scrubbing other people's floors for 20 years after my husband died. This door that had always been open for my son, for my family, for anyone who wanted to enter with love and respect. But that morning, that door remained closed. The white envelope sat on the coffee table in front of me. Inside were bank statements, a timeline of events, photographs, and a legal notice typed on law office letterhead. Evidence that would change everything. Evidence I'd spent 3 weeks collecting in secret, like a detective in my own life. Natalie's scream ripped through the silence again. "Elaine, open this door right now!" I closed my eyes and took a breath. Let me tell you how a mother loses her son, not to death, not to distance, but to something far more insidious. Let me tell you how I became a prisoner in my own home, and let me tell you how, at 67 years old, I finally learned to save myself. My name is Elaine Hendrickson, and I know I don't look 67. At least that's what people used to tell me, back when I still had people in my life who spoke to me with kindness. But these past 18 months have aged me in ways no mirror can reflect. They've aged me from the inside out, in places where the damage doesn't show until it's nearly destroyed you. I was born in a small town in Pennsylvania where women learned from childhood that silence was a virtue and sacrifice was expected. I married young, 19 years old, to a good man named David who worked construction. We moved to the city looking for a better life, and for 37 years we built something together. It wasn't an easy life, but it was ours. We had Evan when I was 23, and from that moment, my world revolved around that little boy with serious gray eyes who looked at me like I was the most important person in the universe. I was a nurse for 15 years before David died, worked the night shift at County General so I could be home when Evan got out of school. David died 8 years ago, a massive heart attack while lifting a beam on a construction site. There was no time for goodbyes, no time for final words. One day he was alive, kissing me goodbye at the door, and the next day he was gone. Evan was 30 when he lost his father, and I remember him crying in my arms, just like when he was a child. "I promise I'll take care of you, Mom," he told me that night, his voice thick with tears. "You'll never be alone." And I believed him. God help me, I believed him with all my heart. After David's death, I was left with this 2-bedroom apartment, bought and paid for, thank the Lord, and a small pension of $680 a month. It wasn't enough, so I went back to cleaning houses. I'm not ashamed to say it. I cleaned other people's bathrooms, ironed clothes that weren't mine, prepared meals in kitchens where I never sat down to eat. I did what I had to do to keep this roof over my head, to not be a burden on anyone. For the first few years, life found a rhythm. Evan came to visit every Sunday without fail. He'd bring a box of glazed donuts from Morton's Bakery and 2 large coffees, and we'd sit right here in this living room and talk about his job at the accounting firm, his plans, about life. Those were good years, quiet years. I'd learned to live with David's absence, learned to fill the silence with NPR radio and phone calls to my friend Dorothy. I had my routine, my small pleasures. Tuesdays I went to Costello's Market. Thursdays to the community center where 6 of us ladies took a knitting class taught by a woman named Margaret, who had infinite patience and terrible jokes. Sundays to St. Benedict's Church, where I'd sat in the same pew for 30 years. It wasn't an exciting life, but it was mine. I was content. I thought I'd figured out how to grow old with dignity. Then, 4 years ago, Evan met Natalie. I remember the day he introduced her to me. It was a Saturday afternoon in April, and he showed up without calling first, unusual for him, looking nervous and excited at the same time. On his arm was a thin, well-dressed woman with dark hair pulled back so tight it looked painful. "Mom, this is Natalie," he said with a huge smile. "She's very important to me." I greeted her with the warmth I always reserved for people who entered my home. I offered her coffee, made her a plate of the cookies I'd baked that morning, tried to get to know her. Natalie smiled a lot that afternoon, but it was a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, something I noticed but chose to ignore because my son was happy. She looked around my apartment with an expression I couldn't decipher at the time, but which I understand perfectly now. It was disdain. She looked at my floral sofa that David and I had saved up to buy, at my lace curtains that I'd hung myself, at my collection of ceramic angels on the mantel, with the same expression someone might use when looking at something dirty. But I didn't see it then. I only saw my son, radiantly happy, and that was enough for me. They got married 6 months later. A whirlwind romance, Evan called it. It was a small wedding in a rented hall downtown. I wore the same navy dress I'd worn to my cousin's wedding 3 years before because I didn't have money for a new one. Natalie looked me up and down when I arrived, and although she didn't say anything, I saw her lips purse in a grimace of disapproval. Evan didn't notice. He was too busy greeting guests, too wrapped up in his happiness to see the discomfort on my face. The first year of their marriage, Evan continued to visit me on Sundays, but with less and less frequency. "Natalie isn't feeling well," he'd say, or, "We have plans with her friends." I understood, or at least I tried to. Newlyweds need their space, their time together. I didn't want to be the meddling mother-in-law everyone dreads. So I waited. I waited for his calls, his visits, any sign that I was still important in his life. The Sunday visits dropped to twice a month, then once a month, then hardly at all. It was Natalie who suggested they come live with me. I remember the afternoon clearly. It was a gray Tuesday in March, 18 months ago. Evan showed up at my door looking serious, Natalie standing slightly behind him with an expression of concern that I now know was completely manufactured. "Mom, we need to talk," Evan said, and my heart immediately started racing because no good conversation ever starts with those words. We sat in the living room, them on the sofa, me in my armchair, and Evan leaned forward with his elbows on his knees, the way he used to sit when he was a teenager trying to explain why he'd gotten a C in math. "We're worried about you, Mom," he began. "You're here all alone in this apartment. What if something happens? What if you fall and no one's here to help?" "I'm 67, not 90, I said, trying to make it sound like a joke. "I'm perfectly fine," Natalie spoke up then, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Elaine, we just think it would be better for everyone if we lived together. That way we can make sure you're okay. And honestly," she glanced at Evan, "it would help us too. Rent in the city is insane right now." There it was, the truth hidden in the concern. They needed a place to live. But Evan jumped in quickly. "That's not the main reason, Mom. We genuinely worry about you being alone, and this apartment is so big for just one person. We could all be together, like a real family." I looked at my son, my boy who I'd raised alone after David died, who I'd worked double shifts to put through community college, and I saw the pleading in his eyes. He wanted this. He wanted me to say yes. And the truth was, I wanted to say yes too. The idea of having Evan close again, of hearing voices in the apartment, of not waking up to absolute silence every morning, it was seductive. I'd been lonely. I hadn't realized how lonely until that moment. My neighbor Sharon had warned me. The next day when I ran into her in the hallway, I mentioned that Evan and Natalie might be moving in. Sharon, who was 72 and had lived in this building for 30 years, put her hand on my arm. "Elaine, honey, think hard about this. I've seen this before. Once they're in, they're in. It's your home. Don't give that up lightly." I smiled and patted her hand. "It'll be fine. He's my son." "That's what worries me," she said. I should have listened to her. They moved in on a rainy Saturday. I remember because I'd gotten up early to clean the apartment, wanting everything to be perfect. I'd cleared out my sewing room, the one room that had been truly mine, where I kept my fabric and patterns and the old Singer machine David had restored for me, and turned it into a bedroom for them. Natalie arrived first, directing the 2 young men they'd hired to move their things. She walked through my apartment like a general surveying conquered territory, pointing at my furniture, making decisions without asking. "This painting doesn't really match," she said, gesturing at the landscape David had given me for our 10th anniversary. "We should probably take it down." "That doesn't go with anything," she commented, running her finger along my bookshelf filled with paperback mysteries and gardening magazines. "We'll need this space for our things." I tried to help, tried to participate in organizing what was still my home, but Natalie waved me away. "You should rest, Elaine. We've got this." Every hour that passed, I watched my home transform into something unrecognizable. My family photos were stacked in a box for safekeeping. My plants were moved to the small balcony where they'd get too much sun. My collection of recipe books, some of them my mother's, were piled in a corner, waiting to be stored somewhere they won't be in the way. That night, after Evan and Natalie had finally gone to bed in what used to be my sewing room, I sat alone in the living room. I looked around at my apartment, at the spaces where my things used to be, at the gaps on the walls where my pictures had hung, and I felt something cold settle in my chest. It felt like I'd just made the biggest mistake of my life. The first few days were strange, but I told myself it was just adjustment. We were all learning to live together, finding our rhythm. I got up early as I always had and made coffee for the three of us. Evan would rush off to work with a piece of toast in his hand, kissing my cheek like he did when he was young. Those moments gave me hope that everything would be okay. But Natalie stayed in bed late, and when she finally emerged from the bedroom, she barely acknowledged me. A mumbled morning at most before pouring herself coffee and disappearing back into the bedroom or onto the balcony with her phone. The first incident happened on Tuesday, my grocery shopping day. I was getting my canvas bags ready, checking my list, when Natalie came out of the bedroom. "Where are you going?" she asked, her tone trying to sound casual, but something else underneath it. "To Costello's Market," I replied. "Like every Tuesday." She leaned against the doorframe, crossing her arms. "Do you really need to go? I can pick stuff up. You should rest." I smiled, thinking it was a kind gesture. "That's sweet, but I like going. I know all the vendors, and besides, it gets me out of the house." Natalie's expression flickered, just for a second, with something that looked like annoyance, but she nodded and said, "Okay, well, be careful." I went to the market as always, chatted with Ron at the produce stand, picked up chicken and vegetables for dinner. When I got home, arms full of grocery bags, I found Natalie in my kitchen, reorganizing all my cabinets. Pots and pans were stacked on the counter. Dishes were piled on the table. She was putting everything in different places. "What are you doing?" I asked, setting the bags down. She didn't even turn to look at me. "Organizing. Everything is so cluttered in here. I can't find anything." "But I know where everything is," I said, feeling my chest tighten. "I've had it this way for years." Natalie finally looked at me, and there was that smile again, the one that didn't reach her eyes. "Well, we all live here now, Elaine. Things have to change." The way she said my name, not Mom, not even a term of endearment, it stung more than I wanted to admit. She moved my everyday dishes to the highest cabinet. My pots and pans went into the bottom drawer where I'd have to bend all the way down to reach them. My spices, organized alphabetically for 20 years, were thrown into a basket with no order at all. I spent that evening trying to memorize where she'd put everything, opening and closing cabinets like a stranger in my own kitchen. When I finally gave up and went to my bedroom, I sat on the edge of my bed and took deep breaths, telling myself I was overreacting. Natalie was just trying to make the space work for everyone. She was trying to feel at home. But a small voice in the back of my mind whispered, "This was your home first." By the end of the second week, Natalie had taken over more than just the kitchen. She rearranged the living room furniture to improve the flow. She threw away my old dish towels and bought new ones, modern, gray, impersonal. She started sitting in my armchair, the one I'd sat in every evening for 8 years, leaving me to squeeze into the corner of the sofa. Small things, all small things, but they added up. The comments started around week 3. "Are you really going out like that?" she asked one Sunday morning when she saw me ready for church. I was wearing a simple floral dress, the same one I'd worn nearly every Sunday for years. "What's wrong with it?" I asked, checking myself in the hallway mirror. "Nothing," she said with a shrug. "It just makes you look older." She walked away before I could respond, leaving me standing there, suddenly feeling ugly and ridiculous in my own clothes. By the 4th month, the pattern was clear. Natalie made decisions about my life, and Evan backed her up. Always. "Mom, Maybe you shouldn't go to your knitting class today, Evan said one Thursday morning. You look tired. I'm fine, I said, gathering my knitting bag. I look forward to Thursdays. But Natalie appeared in the doorway. Evan's right. You've been looking exhausted lately. You should rest. I rest plenty, I said, trying to keep the irritation out of my voice. I enjoy my class. That night, Evan sat me down. Mom, Natalie's worried about you. She says those women at your class just gossip and stress you out. They don't stress me out, I said, bewildered. They're my friends. Caroline says, Natalie, I corrected. He looked confused. What? You said Caroline. Her name is Natalie. He rubbed his face. Right, sorry, I'm tired. Anyway, she just thinks maybe you need more rest. Is that really so terrible? I wanted to scream that yes, it was terrible. That I was 67, not helpless. That I had the right to go to my own class. But I saw the exhaustion in Evan's eyes, and I said nothing. The next week, I missed my Thursday class, and the week after that, then my phone disappeared. I'd left it on my nightstand before bed. I always did. But in the morning, it was gone. I searched everywhere, under the bed, in the bathroom, in my purse. Finally, I found it wedged between the sofa cushions in the living room. How did it get there? I asked Natalie, who was painting her nails on the couch. She shrugged without looking up. I don't know. You must have left it there. But I hadn't. I knew I hadn't. When I turned it on, something was wrong. The screen kept freezing. Apps closed randomly. I asked Evan to look at it, and he fiddled with it for a few minutes before handing it back. Just restart it, Mom. You probably pressed something by accident. I restarted it, and discovered my contacts were gone. Every single one. Dorothy, my friend of 40 years. Margaret from the knitting class. My cousin Rebecca. The ladies from church. All gone. Matthew, I called out. No, Evan. His name was Evan. My contacts are all deleted. He sighed like I'd asked him to solve quantum physics. You must have touched something, Mom. These phones are complicated. But I didn't, Natalie cut in from the kitchen. That's why we tell you to be careful, Elaine. You're not really up to speed with technology. I stared at my blank contacts list, feeling something crack inside my chest. Without those numbers, I couldn't reach anyone. I couldn't call Dorothy to chat. Couldn't call Margaret to ask about class. Couldn't call Rebecca to hear a familiar voice. I was cut off, isolated. And the worst part was I couldn't prove it wasn't an accident. I'll help you recover them later, Evan promised. I'm just swamped at work right now. But later never came. He was always too busy, too tired, too stressed. Within weeks, my friends stopped trying to reach me. They probably thought I was ignoring them, that I'd moved on, that I didn't care anymore. My world got smaller and smaller. Tuesday grocery trips, supervised by Natalie. Thursday knitting class, skipped. Sunday church. It's too cold, Elaine, you'll get sick. Friend visits. You should ask first. We all live here now. I stopped going out, stopped seeing people, stopped being the person I'd been. And through it all, my son saw nothing, or chose to see nothing. I was disappearing in my own home, one small theft at a time. It was the morning I woke up to find my bedroom door open that everything changed. I always closed my door before sleeping. Always. It was the one boundary I'd managed to keep, the one space that was still mine. But that morning, 6 months into living with Evan and Natalie, I opened my eyes and saw my door standing wide open, the hallway light spilling into my room. My heart started pounding. I sat up slowly, looking around. Everything seemed normal at first. Then I noticed my jewelry box had been moved, just slightly, just enough that I could tell someone had touched it. The drawers of my dresser weren't fully closed. There were gaps of about an inch, like someone had searched through them quickly and hadn't bothered to close them all the way. I got out of bed, my hands trembling, and opened my jewelry box. The few pieces I had left were still there. My wedding ring, a pearl necklace David had given me, my mother's silver bracelet. But when I opened the small compartment at the bottom, the compartment where I kept my emergency money, my breath caught in my throat. The envelope was gone. $200. Money I'd saved one $5 bill at a time, tucked away from my pension whenever I could spare it. It was my security blanket, my escape fund if I ever needed it. Money I'd hidden so carefully that no one should have known it existed. And now it was gone. I walked out of my bedroom, my legs feeling shaky. Natalie was in the living room, applying makeup in front of a small mirror she'd set up on the coffee table. My coffee table, where I used to do my crossword puzzles. "Someone was in my room," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She didn't even glance at me. "Must have been Evan looking for something." "Money is missing." That got her attention. She turned slowly, her expression perfectly blank. "What money?" "I had $200 in my jewelry box. It's gone." Natalie went back to her makeup. "You probably spent it and forgot. You know how you get." "I didn't forget anything," I said, my voice rising. "Someone came into my room while I was sleeping and stole my money." She set down her mascara with exaggerated patience. "Are you accusing me of stealing from you, Elaine?" "I didn't accuse anyone. I just said my money is missing." "You just implied it." Her voice had gone cold. "You know, this is exactly what Evan was worried about. You're getting paranoid." That word, paranoid. It hit me like a slap. "I'm not paranoid. I know what I had and where I kept it." When Evan came home that night, I tried to explain what happened. He listened with his jaw clenched, that look on his face that meant he was already tired and didn't want to deal with this. "Did you take money from my jewelry box?" I asked him directly. He looked genuinely confused. "No. Why would I?" I glanced at Natalie, who was watching from the kitchen doorway with her arms crossed. "Then someone else did." Evan rubbed his face. "Mom, maybe you moved it somewhere else. Or maybe you spent it and don't remember." "I didn't." "Caroline says—" He stopped, caught his mistake. "Natalie says you've been forgetting things a lot lately." I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. "What things? What has she told you?" He exchanged a look with Natalie. "Just little things. It's okay, Mom. It happens as we get older." "What things?" I repeated, my voice shaking now. Natalie stepped forward. "Elaine, you asked me 3 times yesterday what day it was. You left the stove on last week. You keep forgetting where you put things. We're just worried about you." Every word she said was a lie. I hadn't asked about the day multiple times. I hadn't left the stove on. But I could see in Evan's eyes that he believed her. She'd been planting these seeds for months, and now they were taking root. "I didn't do any of those things," I said, but my voice sounded weak even to my own ears. "Mom," Evan said gently, like he was talking to a child, "you can't go around accusing people without proof. Natalie would never steal from you. She takes care of you." That night I cried until I had no tears left, not just because of the money, though $200 was a lot to me, but because I understood something fundamental had shifted. They could do whatever they wanted to me, and no one would believe me. I was the forgetful old woman, the confused mother, the one who couldn't be trusted to remember her own life. I was completely defenseless. The next week, Natalie tried to use my debit card at the grocery store. She came home furious. "Your card was declined," she said, slamming the bags on the kitchen counter. I was standing there like an idiot at the checkout. I looked up from the book I was pretending to read. "That's strange. There should be money in there." "Well, there's not. You need to call the bank and fix it." "I'll take care of it," I said, my heart racing. Because the truth was, I had already taken care of it. 3 days earlier, while Natalie was out and Evan was at work, I'd walked to the bank, my legs aching the whole way because I wasn't used to walking that far anymore. And I'd done something I should have done months ago. I'd removed Natalie's access to my account. The bank manager, a kind woman named Patricia, had shown me the transaction history. My hands shook as I looked at the printout. Small withdrawals, over and over. $20 here, $45 there, $75, $30, $60. All adding up to something I could barely comprehend. "How much total?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Patricia typed on her computer. "In the last 4 months, $3,418. The room spun. That was more than 5 months of my pension. Gone. "And this," Patricia said carefully, pointing to another charge, "is an overdraft fee of $500. It looks like someone tried to make a purchase that exceeded your available balance, and it was linked to a credit card account." "What credit card?" Patricia pulled up more information. "It's registered to a Natalie Hendrickson. The overdraft protection pulled from your account to cover her charge." I couldn't breathe. Natalie had a credit card in her name, linked to my bank account, and when she overspent, my money paid for it. "I want her removed from my account," I said. "Right now." Patricia nodded. I'll process that immediately. Would you also like a new debit card? Different number, just to be safe? Yes, please. She handed me a temporary card. The permanent one will arrive in 5 to 7 business days. Mrs. Hendrickson, I have to ask, are you safe at home? The question caught me off guard. Was I safe? Physically, yes. Emotionally? Financially? No. But what could I say? I'm fine, I lied. Thank you for your help. I left the bank with the printouts folded in my purse and the temporary card hidden in my bra, pressed against my heart. I couldn't risk Natalie finding it. That evening at dinner, Natalie brought up the declined card again. Did you call the bank? I did, I said, cutting my chicken into smaller and smaller pieces so I wouldn't have to look at her. There was a problem with the account. They're fixing it. When will it be fixed? I need to be able to buy groceries. Soon, I said. Evan looked between us. Mom, Natalie needs access to your account to pay the bills. You understand that, right? I met my son's eyes. The bills are paid. I checked. But what about next month? And the month after that? He was getting frustrated now. We need to be able to manage things. What I wanted to say was, you mean Natalie needs to be able to spend my money on spa treatments and expensive dinners and whatever else she's been buying? What I wanted to say was, look at the bank statements, Evan. Just look. But I said nothing, because I'd already learned that the truth didn't matter if no one wanted to hear it. 2 weeks later, my phone rang. I was so startled by the sound, I hardly got calls anymore, that I almost didn't answer. It was an unknown number. Hello? Elaine? It's Rebecca. My cousin's voice was like water in a desert. Rebecca, I breathed. How did you get this number? Sharon gave it to me. Your neighbor? I've been trying to reach you for months. Your old number just goes to voicemail, and you never call back. My contacts got deleted, I said, then realized how pathetic that sounded. It's a long story. Elaine, I'm worried about you. Sharon said, well, she said some things that concerned me. I'm coming to visit. Tomorrow, 2 o'clock. And before you say no, I'm already driving. My heart leaped and sank at the same time. I desperately wanted to see her, but I was terrified of what Natalie would do. Rebecca, I don't know if that's a good 2 o'clock tomorrow. I'll see you then. She hung up before I could protest. The next day, I was a bundle of nerves. Natalie had left around noon. Shopping with friends, she said, though I noticed she'd gotten dressed up, makeup perfect, hair done. Evan was at work. I had the apartment to myself for the first time in weeks. When Rebecca knocked at 2 o'clock sharp, I practically ran to the door. She was 58, younger than me by 9 years, with gray-streaked hair and the same warm brown eyes as my mother. When she saw me, her face went pale. Elaine? She whispered. Oh my God. She pulled me into a hug, and I felt her hands on my back, feeling how thin I'd gotten. I'd lost nearly 25 pounds since Evan and Natalie moved in. My clothes hung on me like I was a scarecrow. What's happened to you? She asked, holding me at arm's length. And just like that, all the walls I'd built came crashing down. I started crying, deep, gasping sobs that came from a place so deep I'd forgotten it existed. Rebecca led me to the sofa and held me while I cried. When I finally had no tears left, she got me a glass of water and sat across from me, her face serious. Tell me everything, she said. So I did. I told her about Evan and Natalie moving in, about the slow takeover of my apartment, about my deleted contacts and missed classes and isolation. I told her about the missing money, about the bank statements showing thousands of dollars withdrawn. I told her about feeling like a stranger in my own home, about being called paranoid and forgetful, about disappearing inch by inch until I barely recognized myself. Rebecca listened to every word, her expression growing more and more grave. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Elaine, she said finally, what you're describing is abuse. Do you understand that? This is elder abuse, financial abuse, emotional abuse. But Evan doesn't. I don't care if Evan knows or not, she cut me off. He's allowing it to happen. That makes him complicit. The word hung in the air. Complicit. My son was complicit in my abuse. You have options, Rebecca continued. Legal options. This is your house. You own it outright, right? I nodded. Then you have power. You just need to use it. She pulled out her phone and typed something, then showed me the screen. This is a lawyer I know, Laura Martinez. She specializes in elder abuse cases. She works pro bono for seniors who can't afford regular fees. I can't afford any lawyer, I said. That's what pro bono means, free. She does it because she cares. Rebecca wrote the number on a piece of paper and pressed it into my hand. Call her, please, before this gets worse. What if Evan never forgives me? I whispered. What if I lose him forever? Rebecca took both my hands in hers. Elaine, honey, look at me. You've already lost him. The Evan you knew, the son who loved you and protected you, he's not here anymore. That woman has changed him. But you're still here. You can still save yourself. We talked for another hour, about legal options, about what I could do, about her own experience with her mother-in-law who'd been financially exploited by a caretaker. She made me promise to call the lawyer, made me hide the number somewhere Natalie wouldn't find it. When she finally left, she hugged me tight at the door. Call me, as soon as you talk to the lawyer. I'll come back if you need me. You're not alone in this. But as I closed the door behind her, I felt more alone than ever. Because making that phone call meant admitting that everything had gone wrong. It meant taking action against my own son. It meant accepting that the family I'd dreamed of having again was a lie. I went to bed that night with Rebecca's piece of paper hidden inside an old cookbook on my shelf, between the pages of a recipe for David's favorite pot roast that I'd never make again. It took me 3 days to work up the courage to call. 3 days of an internal war between fear and desperation, between hope and resignation. Every time I reached for the phone, my hand would start shaking. Every time I thought about making that call, I'd hear Evan's voice in my head. Mom, you're being paranoid. But on Tuesday morning, when Natalie left for wherever she actually went, I didn't believe the shopping with friends story anymore, and Evan was safely at work. I pulled out Rebecca's paper and dialed with trembling fingers. Law offices of Martinez and Associates. The voice was warm, professional. Yes, My voice cracked. My cousin gave me this number. She said Ms. Martinez might be able to help me. What is the nature of your concern, ma'am? I took a deep breath. I think I'm being mistreated. In my own home. There was a pause, then Can you hold for just one moment? A minute later, a different voice came on the line. This is Laura Martinez. Can you tell me your name? Elaine Hendrickson. Hello, Elaine. Your cousin was right to give you my number. Can you tell me what's been happening? And somehow, talking to this stranger on the phone, I found my voice again. I told her everything, condensed, factual, trying not to cry. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Mrs. Hendrickson, how soon can you come to my office? Tomorrow? When they're both out? Tomorrow at 10. I'll text you the address. And Elaine, bring any documentation you have. Bank statements, deed to your property, anything showing ownership of the apartment. Can you do that? Yes, I said. And for the first time in months, I felt something I'd almost forgotten. Hope. That night, after Evan and Natalie went to bed, I worked by the light of my phone screen. I found my deed in an old box in the back of my closet. Thank God Natalie hadn't discovered it yet. I found the bank statements Patricia had printed for me. I started a written timeline in a notebook, dating every incident I could remember. The kitchen reorganization, March 15th. The deleted contacts, May 2nd. The missing money, June 8th. I photographed the empty spaces where my things used to be. I wrote down every comment Natalie had made that left me feeling small, every lie she'd told Evan about me, every boundary she'd crossed. I became a detective in my own life, gathering evidence of my own mistreatment. The next morning I lied and said I had a doctor's appointment. Natalie barely looked up from her phone. What for? Just a checkup, I said, my heart pounding. Do you need me to come with you? No, I said too quickly. No, it's fine. It's just routine. She shrugged. Okay, we need milk when you get back. Laura Martinez's office was downtown in a modest brick building. I took the bus. I hadn't been on a bus in months, and found myself almost enjoying the anonymity of it, the feeling of being just another person in the city instead of a prisoner in my own home. The office was small but clean, with comfortable chairs and soft lighting. Laura herself was in her early 50s with kind eyes and a firm handshake. Thank you for coming, Elaine, she said, leading me to her office. Please sit. Can I get you water? Coffee? Water would be nice. She returned with a glass and settled across from me. Now tell me everything. Start from the beginning. So I did. And this time, she took notes. She asked specific questions. Dates, amounts, exact words if I could remember them. She was particularly interested in the bank statements. This is a clear pattern of financial exploitation, she said, studying the printouts. Small amounts, frequent withdrawals, it's textbook. And linking a credit card to your account without your knowledge? That's fraud. But I gave her access to my account, I said. Doesn't that mean you gave her access to help manage your finances with your consent? You didn't consent to her stealing from you. There's a big difference. She leaned back in her chair. Elaine, what you're describing is elder abuse, both financial and emotional. Your daughter-in-law has systematically isolated you, controlled your resources, and manipulated both you and your son. Hearing it said so plainly, so professionally, made it real in a way it hadn't been before. What can I do? I asked. Laura pulled out a legal pad. Several things. First, you own your apartment outright, correct? Yes. David and I paid it off years ago. Then your son and daughter-in-law are residents by your permission only. You can revoke that permission at any time. You can ask them to leave. My heart clenched. But Evan, I know he's your son. But Elaine, he's also an adult who has chosen to support his wife's treatment of you. Either he knows what she's doing and allows it, or he doesn't know because he doesn't want to see. Either way, you have the right to reclaim your home. She explained the process. I could change the locks, serve them with a formal eviction notice, file for restitution of the stolen money. If they tried to force their way in after the locks were changed, it would be criminal trespassing. How much will this cost? I asked, dreading the answer. For you? Nothing. I handle these cases pro bono. This is what I do, Elaine. I help people like you. I felt tears prick my eyes again. Why? Why would you do this for free? Her expression softened. Because my grandmother went through something similar. By the time we realized what was happening, she'd lost everything. Her savings, her home, her dignity. I became a lawyer because of her, so she wouldn't have suffered for nothing. I left her office an hour later with a plan and a list of things I needed to do. My hands were shaking, but it wasn't from fear anymore. It was from something I hadn't felt in months. Agency, power, control. I was going to take my life back. The next 2 weeks were the longest of my life. I was living a double existence, the compliant, forgetful mother during the day, and at night, the woman preparing for war. Laura had given me a checklist. Secure all important documents, deed, bank statements, birth certificate. Check document everything. I started keeping a daily journal. Check. Try to obtain copies of the forged signatures. Check. Schedule the locksmith. Laura had a trusted contact. Check. Prepare the eviction notice. I worked on it piece by piece, carefully, secretly. Every time I heard footsteps, I hid everything. Every time Natalie came near my room, I pretended to be reading or napping. But Natalie was getting suspicious. The bank still hasn't fixed your card? She asked one evening, her voice tight with irritation. They said it'll be resolved soon, I lied. Soon isn't good enough. How am I supposed to buy groceries? Pay bills? I can pay the bills, I said. I've been doing it. She crossed her arms. With what money? If your card doesn't work, I have checks, I said. Which was true. I'd gone to the bank and gotten a new checkbook that she didn't know about. That night I heard them arguing in their bedroom. Not loud enough to make out words, but the tone was clear. Natalie was angry, and Evan was trying to calm her down. The next morning, Evan pulled me aside while Natalie was in the shower. Mom, what's going on with the bank? Natalie's really frustrated. There was a problem with the account. I'm handling it. He ran his hands through his hair, a gesture he'd done since he was a kid when he was stressed. Can you give her access again? Please? It's causing problems between us. Problems? I looked at my son, really looked at him. He had dark circles under his eyes. He'd lost weight too. He looked exhausted and defeated. Evan, are you okay? He blinked, like the question surprised him. I'm fine. Work is stressful, and Natalie's been on edge lately. I think living here is harder on her than she expected. Then maybe you should... I stopped myself. I'd almost said move out, but I couldn't tip my hand. Not yet. Should what? Nothing. I'll figure out the bank thing. But I wouldn't, because 2 days later I found the smoking gun. I was cleaning out the kitchen drawer, not because Natalie asked me to, but because I was looking for an old receipt. Instead, I found a credit card statement that must have been delivered to the apartment and hidden there. The card was in Natalie's name, but the billing address was my apartment, and the statement showed charges I recognized from my own bank account. $287 at Serenity Spa, $456 at Nordstrom, $189 at Russo's, the expensive Italian restaurant downtown. But more damning, at the bottom of each receipt, someone had signed. The signature was a mess, rushed and careless, but I could make out the letters. E. Hendrickson. She'd been forging my signature, charging things to a credit card in her name, forging my signature on the receipts, and paying the bill from my account. I took photos of every page with my phone, my hands shaking so badly I had to take several tries to get clear images. Then I put the statement back exactly where I'd found it. That night, I called Laura and sent her the photos. "This is it," she said. "This is fraud. Clear, documented fraud. Elaine, we can move forward whenever you're ready." "I'm ready," I said. "I want to do it this week." We set the date, Friday. The locksmith would come at 2 o'clock, when Natalie usually left for her mysterious shopping trips, and Evan was at work. I'd have a 2-hour window to change all 3 locks. The rest of that week was surreal. I went through the motions, made coffee in the morning, stayed quiet during the day, locked myself in my room at night. But inside, I was counting down. Friday, Friday, Friday. On Wednesday night, I overheard something that made my blood run cold. I'd gotten up to use the bathroom around midnight. Evan and Natalie's door was closed, but I could hear their voices. I shouldn't have stopped to listen, but I did. "I can't do this anymore," Natalie was saying. "Your mother is ruining our marriage." "She's not ruining anything." "She is. She changed the bank account. She won't let me help with anything. She looks at me like I'm the enemy. Evan, she's getting worse." "Worse how?" "More paranoid, more difficult. She accused me of stealing yesterday. Me, after everything I do for her." "She accused you?" Evan's voice rose. "Mom said someone stole money months ago, but it's escalating," Natalie cut him off. "I think we need to seriously consider Brookside Manor, that assisted living place we looked at." My heart stopped. They'd been looking at assisted living facilities. For me. "Nat, she's not that bad." "Not yet, but she will be. And when she is, we'll be trapped here, taking care of her 24/7. I gave up my career for this, Evan. I moved into this cramped apartment to help your mother, and all she does is make our lives harder." "You didn't give up your career," Evan said quietly. "You were let go before we moved in. We talked about—" "Same thing," Natalie snapped. "The point is, I'm here, sacrificing, while she treats me like I'm the problem. I think it's time we made other arrangements, before this gets worse." There was a long pause. Then Evan, I'll think about it." "Don't think too long," Natalie said. "I have limits, Evan. I'm reaching them." I stood frozen in the hallway, my hand over my mouth to keep from making a sound. They were going to put me in a home, not because I needed care, but because I was in the way. I went back to my room and sat on the bed in the dark. Thoughts raced through my mind. What if they did it before Friday? What if Natalie convinced Evan tomorrow? What if I woke up one morning and they were taking me somewhere against my will? I pulled out my phone and texted Laura. "Can we do it sooner? Tomorrow?" She responded within minutes. "Checking with locksmith. We'll call you AM." I didn't sleep that night. I sat by my window and watched the sky slowly lighten, thinking about David, about the life we'd built, about how I'd gotten here. And I thought about Friday, about taking back what was mine. 2 more days. Just 2 more days. Thursday morning, Laura called. "The locksmith can do it today, 2 p.m. Are you ready?" I looked around my room, at the boxes of evidence I'd packed, at the timeline I'd written, at the life I'd been living for 18 months. "Yes," I said. "I'm ready. I'll meet you there with the locksmith. We'll have 2 hours to change all the locks and prepare the eviction notice. Elaine, this is it. After today, everything changes. Are you absolutely sure?" Was I sure? I thought about the money stolen from my account, the isolation, the way Natalie looked at me like I was a burden. The way Evan had stopped seeing me as his mother and started seeing me as a problem to be solved. "I've never been more sure of anything," I said. The morning passed in a blur. I packed a bag with my important documents: deed, birth certificate, David's death certificate, my mother's jewelry, photos I couldn't bear to lose. I hid it in my closet behind a box of old clothes. Evan left for work at 7:30. He kissed my cheek like always, a habit so ingrained he didn't even think about it anymore. "Love you, Mom," he said absently, already checking his phone. "I love you too, Evan," I said, and my voice must have sounded strange because he looked up. "You okay?" For a moment I almost told him, almost said, "Your wife is stealing from me. She's isolated me. She's trying to convince you to put me in a home. Please, please see what's happening." But I didn't, because I knew he wouldn't believe me. He'd believe her. "I'm fine," I said. "Have a good day at work." After he left, the apartment was quiet. Natalie was still in bed. She rarely got up before 10 anymore. I sat in the living room and waited. At 11:45, she finally emerged, already dressed to go out. Designer jeans, expensive-looking blouse, makeup perfect. "I'm going shopping," she announced. "Need anything?" "No," I said. "Thank you." She grabbed her purse, a Coach bag I was pretty sure she'd bought with my money, and headed for the door. Then she stopped and turned back. "Elaine, we need to talk when I get home. About some things. About the future." My stomach dropped. "What things?" "Just living arrangements. Options that might be better for everyone." She said it casually, like she was talking about changing grocery stores. "Evan and I have been discussing it." She left before I could respond. I sat there for a full minute, my heart pounding. Living arrangements. Options. She was going to push for Brookside Manor tonight. I could feel it. Thank God I'd moved up the timeline. At 1:45, I heard footsteps in the hallway. I opened the door to find Laura Martinez and a man carrying a toolbox. "This is Mike," Laura said. "Best locksmith in the city, also the most discreet." Mike was in his 50s with kind eyes and graying hair. He shook my hand. "Mrs. Hendrickson, let's get you some new locks." They came inside and I closed the door behind them. Laura pulled out a folder. "I have everything prepared," she said. "The eviction notice gives them 30 days to vacate. It's generous given the circumstances. The restraining order paperwork is ready if we need it. And I've drafted a letter explaining the situation and documenting the financial abuse." She spread the papers on my coffee table. Bank statements, the credit card receipts with forged signatures, my timeline, Sharon's note about seeing Natalie at the casino. "This is your evidence," Laura said. "When they arrive tomorrow morning, because they will try to get in, you'll give this to your son. Let him see the truth in black and white." Mike was already working on the first lock. The sound of the drill filled the apartment. I watched him remove the old lock, the lock that David had installed 23 years ago when we first moved in. The lock that had protected us, that had kept us safe. Now it was being replaced because the danger was already inside. "How long will it take?" I asked. "About an hour and a half for all 3 locks," Mike said. "These are high-security deadbolts. Once they're in, no one gets through without your permission." I walked through the apartment while they worked. I touched my things, the photos that were back on the walls, the plants I'd brought back inside, my husband's favorite chair that I'd reclaimed. This was my home. Mine. By 3:30, it was done. 3 new locks, 3 new keys. Mike handed me the keys, and I felt their weight in my palm. "These are yours, Mrs. Hendrickson. No one else has copies. No one can duplicate them without your permission. They're patented keys." "How much do I owe you?" I asked. He glanced at Laura. "Nothing. This one's on me." "I can't." "My mother went through something similar," he said quietly. By the time we realized, it was too late. Consider it paying it forward. After they left, I sat in my apartment in the silence. The new keys were cold in my hand. On the coffee table sat the white envelope, sealed, ready, containing everything Evan needed to see. I hadn't eaten all day, but I wasn't hungry. I made myself tea and sat by the window, watching the sun set over the city. Natalie would be back soon. She'd try her key and it wouldn't work. But she wouldn't make a scene tonight, not alone. She'd call Evan, tell him some story, and they'd go somewhere for the night. A hotel maybe, or a friend's place. But tomorrow morning, they'd be back. Tomorrow morning at 6 a.m., when Natalie returned from wherever she really went on her girls' nights, she'd try those keys again. And tomorrow morning the entire building would wake up to her scream. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? I sat in my living room with all the lights off, watching the hours tick by on my phone. Midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m. At 3 a.m., I heard someone try the door. The key went in, but it wouldn't turn. A moment of silence, then footsteps retreating quickly. That was Natalie, I realized, coming home from the casino or wherever she really spent her time. She didn't scream then. She must have thought she was using the wrong key, or maybe she'd go around to the fire escape, or maybe she'd wait until morning. At 5:30, the sky started to lighten. I made coffee and sat with the white envelope in my lap. At 5:55, I heard footsteps in the hallway again. Heavier this time. Natalie must have called Evan. They were both out there. At 6 a.m. exactly, I heard the key go into the lock. Once, twice, 3 times. Then the scream that would change everything. The scream was exactly as I'd imagined it. Sharp, furious, full of disbelief and rage. "What the?" Natalie's voice echoed through the hallway. "Elaine, open this door right now!" I sat perfectly still on the couch, the white envelope in my lap, my hands folded over it. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat, but I didn't move. Not yet. The pounding started, fists on wood, over and over. "My key doesn't work. What did you do?" I heard Evan's voice then, confused and panicked. "What's going on? Why are you screaming?" "Your mother changed the locks," Natalie shrieked. "My key won't go in. I can't get into my house." "What?" Evan's footsteps were heavy as he ran up the stairs. He must have been in the parking lot when she called. "That doesn't make sense. Why would she—" "I don't know. Maybe she's finally lost it completely." Natalie was pounding harder now. "Elaine, I know you're in there." Doors were opening up and down the hallway. I could hear the murmur of neighbors, the shuffling of feet. Sharon's voice. "What's all this noise?" Mr. Patterson from 5B. "It's 6 in the morning, for God's sake." Evan was at the door now, his knuckles rapping firmly. "Mom? Mom? It's Evan. Can you please open the door? Let's just talk about this." His voice was trying to sound calm, conciliatory, but I knew that tone. It was the same one he used when he wanted me to give in, to be quiet, to accept the unacceptable. I stood up slowly, feeling every one of my 67 years in my knees. I walked to the door and stood on the other side, my hand on the cool wood, listening to them. "Mom, please," Evan said again. "I don't understand what's happening. Just open the door." I took a deep breath. My hand trembled as I turned the deadbolt and opened the door. Just a crack, just enough to see them. Evan was there, his hair a mess, his eyes swollen with sleep. He was wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt. He must have thrown on whatever was closest when Natalie called. Behind him, Natalie stared at me with a fury she no longer bothered to disguise. Her makeup was smeared under her eyes. Her expensive blouse was wrinkled. And her eyes were 2 black points of pure rage. "How could you do this?" Evan's voice rose and he pushed at the door. "How could you lock us out of our own home?" I didn't move. I held the door firm with my foot and reached into the pocket of my cardigan. The white envelope was right where I'd put it, and I pulled it out with steady hands. I held it out to Evan without saying a word. He took it, looking at me like I was a stranger. "What is this?" "Open it," I said quietly. He glanced at Natalie, then slowly opened the envelope. His eyes scanned the first page, the cover letter from Laura Martinez, then the bank statements, then the timeline. I watched his expression change with every page. Confusion, surprise, disbelief, and then something that might have been shame. Natalie tried to snatch the papers from his hands. "What is that? What did she give you?" Evan pulled them away, still reading. His face was getting paler with every second. "Evan, let me see." "Wait," he said, not looking up. His hands were shaking now. The hallway had filled with neighbors. Sharon was standing in her doorway, arms crossed, watching with approval. Mr. Patterson was there too, and the young couple from 4B, all of them witnesses to this moment. When Evan finally looked up, his eyes met mine. "Mom, this can't be true." I nodded slowly. "It's true. Every word, every number, every date." Natalie ripped the papers from his hands and began reading, her eyes going wide. I watched her face turn from red to white as she saw it all laid out. Every credit card slip she'd signed with my name, every withdrawal from my account, every text message where she'd called me a burden, messages I'd recovered from the phone company, the timeline showing how she'd isolated me, the photos of my missing belongings, and at the end, the copy of my deed showing I was the sole legal owner of the apartment, and the letter from Laura Martinez explaining that any attempt to enter without my consent would be considered criminal trespassing. Natalie dropped the papers. They scattered across the hallway floor like fallen leaves. "This is fake," she said, but her voice had lost its power. "She's lying. She's crazy." Evan bent down to pick up the papers. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold them. "Mom, I didn't know. I didn't know she—" "Yes, you did, Evan," I said, and my voice was stronger than I expected. "You always knew. You just chose not to see it." The silence that followed was thick and heavy. Some of the neighbors were nodding. Sharon gave me a small, encouraging smile. Natalie recovered first, turning on Evan with renewed fury. "Do something! You're not going to let your mother do this to us." Evan was staring at a credit card receipt, at the signature that clearly wasn't mine. "Nat, you signed her name. You forged her signature." "I had permission. I was paying bills." "A $287 spa treatment?" His voice was rising now. $456 at Nordstrom? These aren't bills. Those were... Natalie was searching for words. "You told me I could..." "I never told you that." Evan was looking at the bank statements now, at the highlighted withdrawals. $3,000? "Natalie, where did this money go?" She grabbed his arm. "Evan, listen to me. Your mother has been making things up. She's been getting confused, forgetting things. I've been protecting you from how bad it's gotten." "No," I said from the doorway. "That's another lie." Evan looked at me, then at Natalie, then back at the papers in his hands. "Evan," Natalie's voice had taken on a desperate edge. "We talked about this. We talked about Brookside Manor, about how your mother needs more care than we can give. This is just proof that she's not capable." "You were at the casino," I said quietly. "Tuesday afternoons when you said you were shopping. Sharon saw you. With a man." Evan's head snapped up. "What? That's not true." Natalie's voice was shrill now. "She's making that up. Ask her for proof." I pulled out my phone and showed him the photo Sharon had sent me. Natalie at the entrance of Riverside Casino, laughing with a man in an expensive suit, her hand on his arm. Evan stared at the photo. "You told me you were with your book club." He's just a friend. You told me you gave up your career to move in here and take care of my mother," Evan said, his voice dangerously quiet now. "But you were fired before we moved in. You told me Mom was getting forgetful, but looking at this timeline, the only person lying was you." "Evan, please." Natalie reached for him. He stepped back. "How much of what you told me was true? Any of it?" I watched my son's face as the truth crashed down on him. This wasn't just about me being mistreated. This was about him being manipulated, too. "You have 30 days to find another place to live," I said, my voice steady. "The legal notice is in that envelope. Any attempt to enter this apartment without my permission will be reported to the police as trespassing." "You can't do this," Natalie hissed. "We have rights. We live here." "No," Laura Martinez's voice came from the stairwell. She'd been waiting there, just in case. "You don't. Mrs. Hendrickson is the sole owner of this property. You are residents by her permission only, and she is revoking that permission. If you'd like to challenge that, I encourage you to consult with an attorney." Natalie looked between us, me, Evan, the lawyer, the neighbors all watching from their doorways. For the first time since I'd met her, she had no words. I stepped back and closed the door, gently. No drama, no slamming, just a soft final click as the deadbolt slid into place. On the other side, I heard Natalie scream something else, but it sounded far away now, muffled, powerless. I walked back to the couch and sat down in the same spot where I'd spent so many sleepless nights, wondering how I'd ended up here. But that morning, as the sun began to filter through the living room windows, I knew something fundamental had changed. I was no longer the woman who accepted mistreatment in silence. I was no longer the mother who swallowed her tears so as not to bother her son. That morning, sitting on my sofa, with the echo of Natalie's screams still ringing in the hallway, I understood that I had reclaimed something I thought was lost forever. My dignity. The rest of that day passed in a strange blur. After the door closed, I heard Evan and Natalie arguing in the hallway for another 5 minutes. Then their voices faded, and I heard footsteps descending the stairs. They were gone. I sat on the couch, my whole body shaking, not from fear, but from the adrenaline crash. I'd done it. I'd actually done it. Within an hour, my phone started ringing. The first call was from Rebecca. "Sharon just called me," she said as soon as I answered. "She said you did it. She said you changed the locks and Natalie screamed loud enough to wake the dead. Elaine, I'm so proud of you." We both cried on the phone. Happy tears, relieved tears, tears for everything I'd been through and everything I'd survived. Dorothy called next. Rebecca must have given her my new number. "I heard what happened. We've all been so worried about you. Thursday knitting class isn't the same without you. When you're ready, we'd love to have you back." "Thursday," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I'll be there Thursday." Sharon came by around noon with coffee and croissants from the bakery down the street. We sat in my living room in my apartment, and she told me what she'd witnessed. "That woman's face when she realized she couldn't get in," Sharon said, shaking her head. "I've never seen anyone so angry. But you know what? Good. She had it coming. We all knew something wasn't right, Elaine. We should have said something sooner." "It's not your fault," I said. "I didn't even fully understand what was happening myself." "Well, you understand now, and you did something about it. That takes real courage." The calls and visits continued throughout the day. Mr. Patterson stopped by to tell me about his own daughter who'd tried to take control of his finances 5 years ago. "I wish I'd had your strength," he said. "I let it go on too long." Laura Martinez called to check in. "How are you holding up?" "I'm okay," I said, and realized I meant it. "Shaky, but okay." "That's normal. You just did something incredibly difficult. If they try to contact you or show up again, call me immediately. And Elaine, you did the right thing." Evan called at 2 p.m. I saw his name on my phone and my finger hovered over the answer button for a long moment before I pressed decline. I wasn't ready yet. He called again at 4 p.m., again at 6 p.m. At 8 p.m., he left a voicemail. I listened to it that night, sitting in my bedroom with the door locked out of habit, even though I knew no one could get in anymore. "Mom," his voice was hoarse, like he'd been crying. I don't even know what to say. I saw all the papers. I saw the bank statements. I can't believe I didn't see it. Please call me back. Please. I just want to talk." I saved the voicemail but didn't call him back. The next few days followed a pattern. Evan would call. Sometimes I'd answer and we'd have brief, painful conversations where he'd apologize and I'd tell him I needed time. Sometimes I'd let it go to voicemail. The messages ranged from desperate, "Mom, please, I'm so sorry," to angry, "How could you do this without talking to me first?" to broken, "I failed you. I know I failed you." Natalie called once, from a number I didn't recognize. I made the mistake of answering. "You're going to regret this," she said, her voice cold. "You're a bitter old woman who can't stand to see her son happy. I'll make sure Evan never speaks to you again." I hung up and blocked the number. Laura Martinez filed for restitution of the stolen money. "It'll take time," she warned, "but the evidence is solid. You should get at least some of it back." On Thursday, I went back to knitting class. When I walked into the community center, the 5 other ladies stood up and applauded. Margaret, our instructor, had tears in her eyes. "We thought we'd lost you," she said, hugging me tight. "You almost did," I admitted. "But I'm back." Sunday, I went to church for the first time in 4 months. Father Michael welcomed me with a warm handshake. "We've missed you, Elaine." "I've missed being here," I said. That night I sat in my living room, the furniture back where I wanted it, my photos on the walls, David's favorite blanket draped over the couch, and I felt something I hadn't felt in 18 months. Peace. On Tuesday morning, 2 weeks after I'd changed the locks, there was a knock on my door at 9 a.m. I looked through the peephole and saw Evan standing there alone. He wasn't pounding or yelling. He just stood there, waiting. I opened the door but kept the chain on. "What do you want, Evan?" "Can I come in? Please, just to talk." I looked at him, really looked at him. He'd lost more weight. The dark circles under his eyes were worse. He was wearing a wrinkled shirt, like he'd slept in it. After a long moment, I undid the chain and let him in. He stood in the living room awkwardly, like a guest instead of someone who'd lived here. "The apartment looks nice. Back to how it used to be." I didn't respond. I just waited. "I moved out," he said finally. "Last week. I have a studio apartment downtown. It's small, but it's mine." "And Natalie?" "I filed for divorce." He looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. "I should have done it the day you showed me those papers. Maybe I should have done it a year ago. I don't know anymore." He sat down heavily on the couch, his head in his hands. "Mom, I don't even know where to start. How do I apologize for all of it?" I sat in my armchair that I'd reclaimed, and folded my hands in my lap. "Start with the truth. Tell me what really happened." He took a shaky breath. "She told me you were getting forgetful. She'd come to me almost every day with examples. Your mom asked me what day it was 5 times today. Your mom tried to cook and left the stove on. Your mom fell in the bathroom but won't admit it. I thought you were developing dementia." My chest tightened. "I never did any of those things. I know that now, but she was so convincing. She'd show me your mail, bills you'd allegedly forgotten to pay, though now I realize she'd hidden them herself. She'd set up situations that made you look confused. Once she changed all the clocks in the apartment by 2 hours and then asked you what time it was in front of me, and when you said the wrong time, she gave me this look like, 'See? You believed her over me.'" "Yes," he said, his voice breaking. "I did, and I will never ever forgive myself for that." Tears were running down his face now. "She told me we needed to move in here because you couldn't take care of yourself anymore. She said you'd called her crying, begging us to come live with you because you were lonely and scared. You never did that, did you?" I shook my head. "She said you wanted her to manage your finances because numbers confused you. She said you asked her to organize the apartment because you couldn't keep track of things anymore. Every single thing she told me was a lie." He looked up at me with devastated eyes. "How did I not see it?" "Because she was good at it," I said quietly. "And because you wanted to believe her. It was easier than facing the truth." "What truth?" "That you chose your wife over your mother. That you stopped listening to me. That somewhere along the way you decided I was the problem instead of asking yourself why your wife seemed to hate me so much." He flinched like I'd slapped him. "You're right. All of that is right." We sat in silence for a long moment. Outside, I could hear the sounds of the city, cars passing, people talking, life continuing. "Last week I went through our apartment," Evan said, "the one Natalie and I shared before we moved in here. I found documents she'd hidden, credit card statements going back years. She had gambling debts, $60,000 worth. Her parents cut her off because she'd stolen from them. That's why she needed to move in here, not to help you, but because she needed free rent and access to money. Any money." "I know," I said. "My lawyer found her record. Restraining order from a previous boyfriend's family, 2 bankruptcies. It's all documented." Evan put his face in his hands. "I brought that into your life. I brought someone who hurt you, who stole from you, who tried to destroy you, and I helped her do it." "Yes," I said simply. "You did. Can you ever forgive me?" I looked at my son, the boy I'd raised alone, who I'd loved more than anything, who I'd worked double shifts to support, and I saw the man he'd become, broken, repentant, but also responsible for the worst 1.5 years of my life. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I don't know if I can forgive you right now. Maybe someday. But Evan, you didn't just let someone hurt me. You participated in it. Every time you told me I was being sensitive, every time you backed her up when she lied about me, every time you chose her version of reality over mine, you hurt me." "I know," he whispered. "You need to understand that I loved you enough to sacrifice my dignity, my home, my peace of mind. I let myself be erased because I didn't want to lose you. And I lost you anyway." "You didn't lose me," he said desperately. "I'm here. I'm trying to—" "No, I did lose you. For 18 months, I didn't have a son. I had someone living in my house who looked like my son, but didn't act like him. The Evan I raised would never have let someone treat his mother the way you let Natalie treat me." He was crying openly now. "I don't know who I became. I look back at the past year and I don't recognize myself. Then you need to figure out who you are, I said. Not as Natalie's husband, not as my son, as Evan. You need to figure out who Evan is when no one is telling him what to think. I'm going to therapy, he said. Twice a week. I'm working on it. Good. That's good. But you need to do it for yourself, not for me. He nodded, wiping his eyes. Can I see you again? Not now. I understand you need space. But someday? I thought about it. Maybe. When you've done the work. When you can look me in the eye and tell me you know what you did wrong and why you did it. When you can promise me you'll never let someone treat me that way again, including yourself. I promise, he started, but I held up my hand. Don't promise yet. You're not ready. Come back when you are. He stood up slowly. At the door, he turned back to me. I love you, Mom. I know I have no right to say that after what I did, but I do. I love you. I love you too, I said. But love isn't enough. It never was. He nodded and left. I closed the door and locked it, all 3 locks, and stood there for a moment, my hand on the cool wood. It wasn't closure. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't even the beginning of healing. But it was truth. And truth was something I hadn't had in a very long time. The weeks turned into months. I fell back into my old routines, but they felt different now. Better. Thursday knitting class became the highlight of my week. Dorothy and I started going to movies together on Saturday afternoons. Father Michael asked if I'd help with the church's meal program for seniors, and I said yes. I even went back to cleaning houses, just 2 days a week, for clients who appreciated my work and paid me fairly. It felt good to work again, to earn my own money, to be useful. The apartment was mine again. I rearranged it exactly how I wanted it. I painted my bedroom a soft lavender color I'd always loved. I bought new plants and lined them up on the windowsill where they'd get morning light. I framed my favorite photo of David and me and put it on my nightstand where I could see it every morning. My bank account slowly recovered. Laura Martinez's restitution claim was successful. Natalie was ordered to pay back the full amount she'd stolen, plus court costs. The judge had not been sympathetic to her excuses. She'll probably never pay it all back, Laura warned me. But at least it's on her record. If she tries this with someone else, there's a paper trail. Evan texted me occasionally. Never pushing, never demanding. Just small updates. Started a new job. It's going okay. Therapy is hard but helping. Saw a cardinal today. Remembered Dad always said they were good luck. I didn't always respond, but I saved every message. 3 months after I changed the locks, on a Sunday afternoon, my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and saw Evan standing there, holding something. I opened the door. He was alone, looking healthier than the last time I'd seen him. The dark circles were gone. He'd gained some weight back. He looked more like himself. Hi, Mom. Hello, Evan. I brought these. He held up a bouquet of yellow roses, my favorite. I'm not asking to come in. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know I'm working on myself. I'm in therapy twice a week. I've been reading books about manipulation and gaslighting. I'm learning how to recognize when I'm being lied to. I'm learning how to trust my own judgment again. I took the flowers. They were beautiful. Most importantly, he continued, I'm learning how to be the kind of son who deserves a mother like you. I'm not there yet, but I'm trying. That's good, I said softly. I wrote you a letter. He pulled an envelope from his pocket. It's long. It's everything I should have said a year ago. Everything I'm sorry for. Everything I understand now about what happened. You don't have to read it if you don't want to, but I needed to write it. He set it on the doorframe and stepped back. I love you, Mom. No expectations, no pressure. Just, I love you, and I'm sorry, and I'm trying to become better. I know you are, I said. Thank you for the flowers. He nodded and turned to leave. Evan? He turned back, hope flickering in his eyes. Keep going to therapy. Keep working on yourself. And maybe in a few more months, we can have coffee. Just coffee, and see where we are. His whole face lit up. I'd like that. I'd really like that. After he left, I brought the flowers inside and put them in a vase. Then I sat by the window with his letter in my hands. I didn't open it yet. I wasn't ready, but I would be. Someday. I looked around my apartment, my home, and I felt something settle in my chest, something that had been broken for so long I'd forgotten what it felt like to be whole. At 67 years old, I'd learned the most important lesson of my life. It's never too late to save yourself. It's never too late to choose yourself. It's never too late to reclaim your dignity. And if someday my son and I could rebuild our relationship, it would be on my terms, in my space, with my boundaries, because this was my home, my life, my peace. And no one, not even my own son, would ever take it from me again. I opened my journal and wrote, Day 90, the sun is shining, the apartment is quiet. I made coffee this morning in my own kitchen, using my favorite mug, sitting in my own chair. Dorothy is coming by at 2 for tea. Thursday I have knitting class. Sunday I'll go to church. And I am happy. Really, truly happy. I saved myself, and that's enough. I closed the journal and smiled, a real, genuine, free smile. Outside my window, the city hummed with life. Inside, I was finally at peace. I'd survived. I'd fought back. I'd won, and I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Home.